No audio. All right. It would help if I would unmute myself. So, good evening, you beautiful people. We'll start this over again. So, welcome to Security Plus SY0-701. It is domain 2, not domain 1, as my slide says. It's definitely been a day. So, got the deck together, but I'm probably going to refer to a couple resources outside the slideshow. But we're going to be covering domain objectives 2.1 and 2.2 tonight. What is up, Laura Flores and Koosh Doctor? Hope you can hear me now. I had my mute on while I was kind of getting everything prepped, so I am failing on some spots here, but it's certainly been a day. So we'll rock and roll this and get into the fun stuff here. Threat actors and motivations. So compare and contrast common threat actors and motivations, and then explaining common threat vectors and attack surfaces. So this is the first portion of domain 2. I'll probably touch a little bit onto some of 2.3 and some of 2.4, but this will kind of give you that foundation, building off of one. Some of the topics that we covered in domain 1 between myself and Jesse. It'll also continue to build, and that's really this whole journey we're taking together. It's all building one thing on top of another. So we're going to roll into this and start looking at threat actors and motivations. So threat actor types. So there are several that are the primary recognized ones by CompTIA and most of your cybersecurity industry. You have your unskilled hackers. These are your script kiddies. These are the people that they don't really have a lot of technical knowledge, but they can download a tool, they can run a tool, and they can see what they can break with it. So they're not really looking to gain financial compensation for what they're doing. They're just trying to look to get that thrill out of breaking somebody's website or taking down their corporate network. So script kiddie is the best thing to associate with unskilled hackers. In 601, it did refer to them as script kiddies, but it looks like they've changed coming into 701. It is now unskilled hackers is what you'll see on the exam. So nation state, here I've got to make a little bit of an adjustment because nation state and organized crime probably should be right next to each other in this list. So organized crime down here in nation state, because both now can be considered advanced persistent threats. Because nation states, you have the full backing of a government. It is the government actually doing these breaches and getting into networks and trying to, whether it is political and they're trying to interrupt an election or cause discourse around an election. Think back to 2016 and Russia's hand in the 2016 election between Trump and Clinton. It's not a political show. We're not going to get into that. But if you think about that, that is something that is political, another government trying to interfere. And it could be economic motivations where a government is trying to get some proprietary data, or they're trying to get something that is will advance them in an economic sector that they are maybe growing in, or they haven't quite gotten to the point where they can be competitive in the market. So they'll try and hack into a company and get that proprietary data. Because things like patents don't apply when you get overseas unless you apply for those patents in other countries and things like that. So they can start to steal that data and utilize these things and then resell them, whatever that proprietary data is, or that technology. So the other part of that is organized crime. Organized crime operates more like a business now. I mean, you have different departments, you have people are getting regular paychecks. Like, it is crazy. I'll pull up some documentation, but when you look at essentially the financial structure and the business structure of organized crime now, you have a level that it looks like a regular business, just not necessarily the best business. It's has malicious intents, or primarily for financial gain. So you're looking at ransomware, data exfiltration, extortion, just ways of being able to illicitly gain money in exchange for getting your network back, or getting your data back without them releasing it, or they may even just be stealing your data to sell it to a country that wants that data. So they're kind of guns for hire, so to speak. Hacktivists. This one you're going to see quite a bit. I had like 2 or 3 of these questions on the 601 exam about hacktivism. But you do see this, especially around stuff like if there's anything political going on, or there's underrepresented parties in a country, you will see hacktivism where people go in and deface websites, or they'll try and take down a network. They'll use a low orbit ion cannon to DDoS a network, and use that distributed denial of service to keep their customers from getting to a certain company that supports the other side, or the other view. So that activist, the hacktivist goal, they're just looking for whatever their greater good is, or their philosophical belief that is only to support their belief. They're not looking for money necessarily. They're not looking for anything other than, we're trying to make a point here. And then insider threats. This one is also big, especially as you continue your cybersecurity career. Essentially, an employer or individual with authorized access. So that could be an employee, it could be a third party that is allowed access into your network. But they're able to cause damage to the organization. Now, this can be unintentional. It could be due to negligence. It could be somebody clicks on a phishing email. It immediately makes them an insider threat. Whether or not that person gets punished is up to that organization and their policies, but it is not necessarily always malicious intent. But it could be, due to the fact that, somebody got passed up for promotion, or they had something else happen. This person all of a sudden, they want revenge. They want to take it out on the company because they feel that they've been wronged. So, the insider threat, the behaviors of these people, and your user behavior analytics are really strong, because you need to know when there are things going on in your network that aren't normal. If somebody's logging in at midnight and they never used to do that, but they're starting to do it all the time, and they're pulling large files out of the servers, you might have an insider threat, or they may have been manipulated by an outside party to sell that access to that third party. They've been bribed, whatever may be the case. So insider threats are absolutely a possible threat. It could be even somebody that picks up a USB drive and plugs it into their computer. But I heard from a friend that his company gave him the authorization to go and buy 24 rubber duckies and load them up with malware, and something kind of nondescript, more just load them up so they can sit there, and when somebody finds this flash drive that's loaded with, like, it has the name of the project written on it, they plug it into the computer, it locks the computer up and gives them a nasty message, and then they can't do anything until they call support, and then the cybersecurity team and my friend have to come in and actually talk to them about what they did and why they shouldn't be doing that. So, it is a real thing that you can start to educate and teach on these malicious, potentially malicious events, without, these people that wouldn't know, they just don't know any better. It comes down to user training, security awareness training. And sometimes the best way to do it is to, make people screw something up. But if you're the one that writes the script that actually locks their computer down, it's not as bad, because you know how to get back into it and you can undo it. But that's something that you don't want to have happen to the organization. Like if you think the Stuxnet, where the US and Israel loaded flash drives with malware, or got malware onto people's computers, they put files onto their flash drives, took them into work, and then plugged them in, and then all of a sudden that air-gapped network is no longer air-gapped. So things like that, it's definitely important, and all a part of that security and awareness training. And then the last one, shadow IT. So when you get into an organization and you get people that, they think they know better, or they have something that they want to do, but it's been blocked by IT, and, they've not been allowed to do it. So whether it's, spinning up a website, or spinning up another server. The push to cloud has really opened it up to where people can do things without approval or knowledge. And so you use your network analytics and you look and see, okay, why are we uploading a bunch of stuff to Dropbox? We don't have a corporate Dropbox account. Okay, what's going on here? And then you investigate it. Okay, well, a bunch of our users have set up Dropbox accounts and they're using this to share proprietary company data on essentially a public server. I mean, essentially that data, it could be moved around. It could leave remnants on another part of that particular bucket or that storage device. So not having users using technology solutions, it increases essentially your threat landscape, where you could have data be exfiltrated, or they reuse passwords, things like that. So you have this unknown or unmonitored asset on the network or being utilized by your users. You don't have a way to control the data going in or out of that, and you don't have an idea of what ports, if they plugged in a wireless router because they wanted better signal, so they plugged it into the port in the wall, and all of a sudden they've got a Wi-Fi network running to connect their laptop and get a stronger signal. It's something that they could have open management ports and stuff like that could provide a path of attack for an attacker to get into the network, whether it's through the wireless side or through the web management interface. So shadow IT is definitely a problem. I've encountered a little bit of it personally, and it is something that has to be seriously investigated when things come up. So over here, attackers may be internal or external threats. That is kind of the first qualifier. Second is the level of funding and what kind of backing they have. And then the third is their sophistication. So what is the level of their attacks? And so I have this diagram down here that is essentially all of your attackers. So your script kiddies, non-malicious actors, those are your unskilled hackers. Tier 2, criminals and insider threats. So that can be not necessarily organized crime, but it can be somebody that's starting to push past that unskilled hacker and really starting to get towards that edge of organized crime. Get into tier 3, and as it gets more and more red into the black, these are people with more and more sophistication, more and more funding, and they're able to lock into a network and become an advanced persistent threat, which would be your nation states and organized crime. Because you can have organized crime that'll break in and just sit in a network for years without being detected. So it is sometimes all about what data they can find and what they can sell. So all the motivations: data exfiltration, so stealing the data out of the network, taking data that you shouldn't be removing from that network. Espionage, whether it's corporate espionage or political espionage between governments. Could be service disruption, taking down somebody's network, DDoSing them. Could be blackmail, finding something on a company or on a person and holding it over their head. Financial gain, that's our ransomware. That is right there, organized crime. Could be part of the data exfiltration if you're selling that for financial gain. Philosophical and political beliefs, that is your hacktivists. Ethical intent could also be under your hacktivists as well. It could also be insider threat if you've got somebody that they feel like the company they're working for isn't doing the right thing, and they're they're harming the environment, or maybe the case, it could be an insider threat as well. Revenge, insider threat. Disruption and chaos, that'll be your hacktivists. Sometimes organized crime. Unskilled hackers, absolutely. They're thrill seeking. They just want to see the world burn sometimes. And then war, that'll be your nation states. Look at Ukraine and Russia. Look at Israel and Hamas right now, and then Israel and Iran taking action on Israeli-made water control devices in these water treatment facilities. They were just made in Israel 20 years ago, but it's still, because of what's happening in Israel, that's kind of a fall over from it. So that war side of thing and the philosophical political beliefs can also fall under that nation state, and or service disruption as well. So a lot of these overlap and they can kind of fall within each other, but when you run across the exam questions, they'll be typically a little more clear about which one it is, or you have to sit there and think about, okay, which one of these is it over the other. So like data exfiltration and financial gain, were they trying to steal it for an advantage, or were they trying to steal it to sell that data to somebody else? So you'll see questions that it may overlap a couple of these together, or they'll use multiple, but it's ultimately what that final goal was for the attacker. So the different hats of our hackers. Some people say there's 6, there's blue, green, and red. But the 3 that you need to know for the exam are white hats, which are your good hackers. Those are the people that are employed to essentially do a penetration test on your network. They're checking your network and checking your systems for vulnerabilities and just making sure that you cannot be hacked. Black hats are your bad hackers. Those are the ones that are trying to gain unauthorized access and use it for personal gain or for their personal beliefs. And then your gray hats sit somewhere in between. It's can sometimes be your script kiddies. It can be people that are just curious, but they're trying to figure out how to break into a system. But when they get in, they will let the company know, or they won't publish it publicly. They'll give that company time to fix their problem before they publish it publicly, which I think Black Hills was talking about it earlier today. John Strand was talking about Microsoft Teams having numerous vulnerabilities, and they alerted them 45 days ago, and they said they gave them 60 days to fix the problems. It would be something that I would consider almost gray hat, because you're letting them know and you're giving them time to fix it before you release that. Here are the vulnerabilities. So it gives them time to fix it internally before somebody else finds those problems, and they can leverage them to extort Microsoft team customers or anybody using that particular product. So gray hats, it's especially with the laws and everything else. If you're like in the UK, gray hat hacking is potentially dangerous. You can get thrown in jail because their laws are very strict on stuff like that. Here in the US, we don't quite have the laws in place, and they tend to be, almost like Good Samaritan kind of friendly to a degree. But it's all up to the person that you're alerting. So it could be something that you hack into that network, and then you let them know, and they go, well, you hacked our network, we're going to file a lawsuit against you. So it's really at your own risk doing something like that. But that's where you also get into bug bounties and stuff like that. You can kind of be a gray hat with some protection as well. So big part of the industry, but it's definitely prevalent, and it's kind of just the halfway point between white hats and black hats. So threat vectors and attack surfaces. So kind of a big section. Really what it comes down to is, so 0-day attacks are those attacks that nobody knows that there's a vulnerability except for the people that find it. So these vulnerabilities are not known to other hackers. So whoever finds it and they know it, they sit on it, or they use it to infiltrate other organizations and try to get footholds, as many footholds as they can. But not alert how they got into that network and just kind of sit quietly. So that's why APTs, so your nation states and your organized crime, are going to be the ones that'll primarily use your 0 days, because they're very well funded and they have the time and the funding to be able to research for vulnerabilities like that. But 0 days, you see them all the time in the news. Somebody broke in somewhere and they finally figured out that it happened, and it makes the news. And things like the Move It breach, it was a 0 day. Nobody knew that it was coming, and it hurt a lot of people because they took their time and they were able to break into a lot of networks before somebody realized what was going on. So your attack surface essentially is where the attack happens. The threat vector is what happens. So the attack surface could be, it could be that bridge point into the internet for you, whether it's a Bastion host or it could be a particular server that is internet facing. But the threat vector is how the malicious actor breaks into that system. So what vulnerability do they use? So if you have a Apache server that is sitting web facing and it's connected to your network, that's your attack surface. The vulnerability, because it's out of date and you didn't patch it, is your threat vector. So it's where and how, essentially, is how attack surface and threat vectors are broken down. Your threat vectors can be just about anything. So instant messaging, SMS, that's your smishing, and you will see that term. I think smishing and vishing are kind of goofy terms. I think they sound silly, but that's just my opinion. But the smishing is your SMS phishing, and then vishing is voice call phishing. So somebody calling in to pretend to be somebody else and trying to get an employee to unlock an account or take down a firewall for maintenance or whatever may be the case. Email, that's your phishing, or your spear phishing if they're targeting a specific person. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a CEO or anything like that. It can be a particular person in accounting or a particular group of people that they're hitting, is spear phishing. And then whaling is trying to hit the big targets. So your CEOs, your CIOs, CTOs, trying to hit the people that have the ability to make that call. And that's when the business email compromise comes in, and you can, hey, I need you to pay this invoice to XYZ bank account and then 75 grand overseas instead of to one of your vendors. Wired networks, so unsecure ports, users plugging in unauthorized devices, or a malicious actor plugging in their device to an unsecured port can absolutely be a threat vector. That's your attack surface, essentially, is your wired network. So making sure that you shut down ports that you're not using, putting in network access control to prevent unauthorized devices to be able to get an IP address or to communicate across the network. Wireless networks, so you have your personal area networks, you have your local area networks, and then wide area networks. So Bluetooth would be your personal area network, so your watch, your phone, your car, anything that you're connecting to your device, that can be a threat vector. People can use Bluetooth to lock your phone up. They can use it to sniff and try and pick up data across it. Wi-Fi, kind of the same thing. You can sniff a lot of information across packets. You can deauthorize devices and try and get them to reconnect so you can pick up the handshakes and see if you can decode the password. So wireless networks, when we get into that, it's going to be later in Security Plus, but talking about how your antennas are pointed, unidirectional antennas, omnidirectional antennas, antenna strength, and things like that can all help protect your network by not allowing that signal to leak outside your building, so somebody in their car out at the road can pick up the signal and try and intercept that traffic and break into your network. Image or file base is kind of self-explanatory. It's malicious code built into an image or into a file. It could be a macro in like a Excel workbook. It could be just somebody renamed a malicious file.exe as exe.doc, and you run it and it loads malware onto the device. So fairly self-explanatory. Removable devices, I talked earlier about using USB drives. You'll see some companies drop USB drives in the parking lot, and their penetration testing companies drop USB drives, and people are curious what's on them, so they plug them into their work computer and see what's on there, and that is an easy threat vector. Again, back to Stuxnet, that was all removable devices that they were able to transfer that malware into a air-gapped network, so something that is not connected to the internet and should be completely secure. Vulnerable software, you gotta patch it. That's it. Is your software, if you have software that is open source and not being updated, or it's way out of date and there's known vulnerabilities. Having that vulnerable software on your network is certainly a threat vector that people can use to get into the network. Unsupported systems or applications. This makes me think of shadow IT. So if you have people using things on your network that is not supported by IT or your information security team, that is not good, because you have potential data leakage, you have that reuse of passwords, you don't have the single sign-on services or the federated sign-ons. So these systems, people are reusing passwords, that third-party company could get breached, and then you have no recourse because you don't have a contract with them, but somebody was using that system and it allowed access into your network. So making sure that you don't have stuff that's installed that is reaching out to the internet or accessible back into your network that you did not sign up for. Open service ports. I mean, again, this is like your unsecure port. So HTTP, support 80, 21, 23. I mean, looking at these, your open ports. Good evening, Exam Slayer and Christopher Whitlock. Welcome to the party. Great to see y'all this evening. But yeah, make sure, ports that you're not using, services that you're not using, don't have them open. And that's, really what it comes down to. If you're not using Oracle, you shouldn't have 1521 open. Like, there's stuff that is kind of should be common sense, but maybe you put it in as a base deny all, and then you only allow certain ports to actually work on your firewall or on your network. Normally the best way to go is use the deny list, and then or just have a default deny, and then everything else you whitelist and you allow certain ports to communicate. Default weak credentials, you see this all the time. Fortinet devices, you see it across people that they buy a off-the-shelf router and they don't change the default password, so it's admin or admin password is the login for it. And some of those have web-facing management interfaces. So having those sitting out there, I will give somebody an easy access to a network. I found a few on Shodan myself that I was able to log into somebody's router a couple hundred miles away from me, just because they didn't change the credentials on it. Supply chain vulnerabilities, that is something that you really got to vet who you're buying stuff from. So whether it's a software vendor, whether it is hardware, but it comes down to what they call the chain of trust. And it's essentially, where is everything coming from? Are the chips made in China, or are they made in the US through a trusted party before we put them in our devices that you're buying from us? But essentially knowing what's on your network, where it comes from, and it also kind of comes down to the third party suppliers that you use. If they're providing like a camera system or something like that, and they tell you, oh, well, we need to put in one of our routers. Well, okay, who's making that router? Do you have a Huawei router, or is it something that you wouldn't normally put on your network? And what are the vulnerabilities of that? Because you don't have necessarily the visibility into it. You don't have the patches for it. It's not part of your process. It's not part of your normal network infrastructure. So being able to identify, if somebody's trying to install something into your production network that may not necessarily need to be there, or it shouldn't be there because it's not one of your trusted suppliers. And then lastly, humans. Humans are your weakest point in any network. They are absolutely the most common threat vector because of phishing, vishing, email compromise, smishing, whatever it may be, whether it's social engineering, somebody holding the door open for somebody else. Humans are always the weakest because we have an innate need to trust, and that willingness to trust and just give people the benefit of the doubt, we wind up being the weakest point. And that drives us into our next slide, social engineering. So this is always a fun one. you read or listen to some of the stories of people doing penetration testing and using social engineering to get into a building. Oh, my key card's not working. Do you mind swiping me in? And somebody lets them in the front door. They're carrying a box of donuts and they can walk right in and go right to the server room. Like, silly stuff. And you think that it shouldn't happen, but it happens more often than you think. But humans are the weakest link in most organizations. So the main social mechanisms you need to know for the exam are authority. So somebody impersonating somebody of management, somebody that has that authority to give them an order to, we need you to take down the firewall for maintenance. And so it defaults open all the way through while it's doing an update. So you just gave that attacker access to the network because you took down the firewall to do an update on it when it was somebody impersonating the IT manager. Intimidation, it could be, hey, we've got incriminating photos of you, or we have some sort of dirt on you, or if you don't do this, we're gonna threaten your family, whatever it may be. Intimidation can be a driver as well. Consensus, well, everybody else is doing it. The old peer pressure back from high school. You remember the videos in school. Consensus, well, everybody else is doing it, or everybody else buys this particular cryptocurrency. So you see a lot of stuff with companies that are doing, or people that are doing brand impersonation, or a company gets hacked and somebody uses the company Twitter account, and I refuse to say X, it's Twitter, but uses that consensus and that familiarity, which is number 5 here, that familiarity with the brand, to leverage that and get people to buy in to a cryptocurrency, drive the price up so they can sell it and make money on it. Scarcity, you get the emails, the phishing emails. Well, there's only 5 more iPhones left at this price. Better buy it now. And you just gave somebody $500 for nothing because you're never going to get anything in the mail. And you probably gave them your address and everything else, and they're going to take your credit card number and use it to buy other stuff too. So it's kind of one of those where, scarcity, people think they're getting a great deal, and it's really not a great deal. Trust and urgency. So trust is, again, it comes down to, well, hey, I work in this other department, or you should trust me because I know XYZ about this, or I work at a third party that you deal with on a regular basis. Maybe there's business email compromise. You get an email from somebody at a third party that you have an outstanding bill for, and they send it to you and say, hey, well, we've changed our bank account information. Need you to update that and then send the funds over. And because you trust that person, you've been dealing with them for years, but you don't realize that their email has been compromised, and you just sent over $75,000 to their to the attacker's bank account. And then urgency kind of falls under the same thing. Hey, you need to pay this now. You got to do this right away. Just that sense of urgency can get people to cut corners and do things they wouldn't normally do, especially when you pair it with things like trust or authority, or even intimidation. Even scarcity, those two can get paired often as well. So it's a lot of these kind of work together, or you may see 2 or 3 of them used in social engineering attacks. But those are the 7 that you need to know for the exam. And then kind of running down the attack types, we went through some of these: phishing, spear phishing, whaling, phishing, smishing. Pretexting is using a fake scenario to manipulate someone into divulging confidential information. So that can be telling somebody that you're the chief technology officer, you're the CTO for the company, and you need them to do something. You got to be able to, you manipulate that person to think that you are in a position, or that you have the authority to give them those orders and the reason to do something for you. Brand impersonation, again, just mimicking a trusted identity or brand. You've seen it recently with some of the brands that have been hacked, and then they start pushing cryptocurrency and it's completely fraudulent. Typo squatting, you have a misspelled domain name. So Amazon.com, you type in smazon.com and it brings you to another domain that looks like Amazon, and you treat it like Amazon, and then all of a sudden you punch in your credit card information and it, or even just your credentials for Amazon, because people reuse passwords. It's part of life. Users are going to reuse passwords, and all of a sudden now your corporate network is compromised because that person used their same password for Amazon that they did on their business login. Business email compromise is impersonating a company executive. We kind of talked about that with the trust, and essentially getting somebody to do something within the company. Sometimes this is, request to transfer funds, fraudulent invoices, impersonating attorneys. So it can even be somebody that is outside the organization, and they use typo squatting, so they have a similar domain name for their email to a company that you use, and they send over an invoice that looks almost identical to the regular invoices that you get, and get you to send money to these new bank accounts. So exam Solaire, the difference between piggybacking and tailgating. Honestly, I would almost consider those about the same. Tailgating, you have somebody hold the door open. It could also be, that door's got a lock on it. It's got a key card lock, and you catch that door before it closes. So I honestly, personally, I look at that, and piggybacking and tailgating would be synonymous to me. I wouldn't necessarily differentiate between the two. There may be, some of the, if you want to really get into semantics for it, I'm sure there are cases where they're different, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they are different. But yes, access control vestibules can absolutely take care of that. You can, a number of different ways. Cameras can help with it. Good just security policy and security awareness training can also significantly help with tailgating and piggybacking. It's definitely an issue, but something that with educating your users and really driving the importance of, you don't hold the door for anyone. Let them scan their own card. So, that person's carrying 2 boxes of donuts. Well, let me take those donuts for you. Go ahead and scan your badge, let you in, and then I'll give them to you as you open the door, and then I'll scan my badge after the door closes. You can stop that from happening by taking that extra step that, some people may not necessarily do without being educated in that way. Dumpster diving, man, I used to do that all the time back in high school. Used to go behind Staples and Office Depot and go pull stuff out of the dumpster. I wound up with a couple nice computer chairs and a couple PCs, monitors, all sorts of stuff. But what they're talking about here is finding sensitive information that's been thrown in the trash. So documents that weren't shredded. It could be USB drives, it could be hard drives, it could be anything that has not been disposed of properly. Which is why you see companies like Iron Mountain that come by and they have the shredding rigs in the back of their trucks. So they'll come by and pick up their canisters and take all of your documents and they'll shred them there on site. And so you can actually have somebody verify that all your sensitive information has been properly destroyed, and they can sign off on that. And it's that extra step of verification to ensure that data does not get released publicly. Yeah. I dumpster dived for years, but yeah, the movie Hackers is fantastic. I love that movie. Shoulder surfing, essentially somebody looking over your shoulder, watching you type in stuff or just reading sensitive information off of somebody else's screen. So it doesn't necessarily have to be trying to figure out what they're typing, whether it's a password or something like that. It could just be seeing proprietary information on somebody's monitor, whether they're sitting on a train or sitting on a plane and you're looking between the seat and you can read their monitor. that could be shoulder surfing. So being able to get sensitive information off of somebody else's computer just by hanging around behind them or within view of that monitor to be able to gather that data. Watering hole attacks. This one can also kind of fall with the previously in our slides we had the threat vector for files, and there were for a long time there were, or maybe even still now, but groups that were putting malicious banner ads on websites, and they would have malicious code in them. So when you went to that website and it loaded up that banner ad, it would download malware to your computer, download spyware, whatever it was. So that's a watering hole attack, essentially, where users that you want to target visit this particular website, you go in and you poison that watering hole, and you make it so that they're going to end up downloading this malware through, it could be 1 or 2 steps, but because they visited these web pages, and then the image downloads, and because it downloads, it runs that code, and then it downloads malware onto the computer, and they may never know it, but all of a sudden you've got a keylogger on their computer, or you've got spyware just to see what they're looking at, or what data is being transmitted on their local network. So watering hole attacks, it sometimes can be a little more involved. Like you may have to get access to that web server to put the images on there, but it also could be that you get into the supply chain for the marketing company that makes those images, and you put in that code into these images from the marketing company. So I mean, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, I mean, the watering hole can definitely be a deeper attack. And then impersonation, just where the attacker is able to appear to a remote user system as another individual. So it can kind of, I think, fall under brand impersonation. So some questions on the exam, you'll see impersonation and brand impersonation in the same question. And so you got to read the question to figure out, okay, which of the two is the better answer? Which one, okay, is this impersonating a brand, or is it impersonating a particular person? How far do we, like, what's the best out of the 4 answers is what it comes down to. But I also love this little comic down here. Just little social engineering by the robot. You mind clicking all the photos of the bicycles? We're in. We got into the network. And that is that for my education for this evening. We'll hop into some exam questions here. Anybody that'd like to participate, we'll jump on in to VVox here, and ID number 144856900, and we'll run through. I've got 11 practice questions for this evening already. Yeah, no, my presentation was definitely short today. It was life got in the way today. Had a lot going on, and I definitely would have wanted to cover at least one more section, but looking at the time, I definitely dug in pretty deep into the like 6 slides that I had tonight. But we'll definitely be doing more next week, and probably expanding on and kind of recovering a little bit of 2.1 and 2.2. And as we expand into 2.3, 2.4, there'll be some overlap, especially with using threat feeds and things like that, and how it ties back to your APTs and your organized crime groups and things like that. So we'll Chris, I know I'm disappointed in myself, but yeah, I gotta impart what knowledge I can, and unfortunately I'm human too, so life gets in the way. I had to take the dogs to the vet today, had all sorts of stuff going on that just I wasn't expecting, so it took away from the time that I really want to spend to bring you that top quality content that I want to. But unfortunately I'm here. Well, I said fortunately, I said unfortunately. Fortunately I'm here. I can still do this, and I can still spend time with you. Got one of the puppers here. He's sleeping on my lap. Not anymore, but yeah, I mean, it's just it was a Monday for sure. Absolutely, Laura. Well, let's get rocking and rolling here into our first question. So Gwen's company has been contacted by customers asking about a new social media account operating under the company's brand. The social media account is advertising cryptocurrency, which Gwen's organization does not sell or work with. What type of attack best describes what Gwen's organization has encountered? Is it misbranding? Is it impersonation? Is it brand impersonation? Or is it crypto phishing? I'll give you all a few seconds here. But should be an easy one. We just talked about this a couple seconds ago in our social engineering slide. Dang, we are split across the board. So it is brand impersonation. So like I said, we were talking on the social engineering slide. It's a pick the best of the answers. So crypto phishing, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely there. So crypto phishing's made up, but it is, they're dealing with cryptocurrency. They're trying to get you to click on a malicious link or a link to where they're going to empty your cryptocurrency account. But it does fall under impersonation and brand impersonation. But because it is Gwen's company, and it's their company social media account, or it's a company that is operating under the company's brand, or somebody that is trying to impersonate them, it would be a brand impersonation. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's what we're here for, Chris. We are learning. So yeah, this is all about education. All right, if it sounds like I'm taking you down a notch, it's not my intent ever. It is all about, we're here to learn from each other, and we're here to grow. That's this whole journey, and in cybersecurity, it never ends. So we just keep on moving forward. We learn from our mistakes, and we keep growing. So again, this is one of those CompTIA questions where it is, what is the best solution? And that's how, whether or not it says what is the best, what's the best answer, always look at CompTIA questions as what is the best of the answers. So start to narrow it down. So we know it's some sort of impersonation, but what out of the two is the best one? That would be where I end up at brand impersonation. So when a caller was recently directed to Amanda, who's a junior IT employee at her company, the caller informed her that they were the head of IT for her organization and that she needed to immediately disable the organization's firewall. After Amanda made the change, she discovered that the caller was not the head of IT and that they were actually a penetration tester hired by her company. What social engineering attack best describes this? So this one was tricky. I missed this one. I got this completely wrong. So it, again, is another, what is the best answer here? And I wound up obviously not smishing because it's not SMS. It wasn't done over text message. I mean, obviously it was a caller. So a caller was recently directed. So somebody on the phone. Okay, so that leaves me 3 here that I have to choose from. And this one's almost unfair at how difficult it is because CompTIA's questions really aren't this hard. But I mean, it borders on pretexting, it borders on impersonation. Well, it actually, I mean, it's definitely impersonation, but it's somebody setting up that pretext, impersonating somebody, but it's also done over the phone. So it's the vishing as well. So really it comes down to what is the best. You have a 1 in 3 chance of getting it right is what it came down to for me. And I unfortunately got it wrong. Most everybody chose the same answer I did when I did this question earlier today, vishing. The actual correct one is impersonation. So the reason that they say it's not vishing is it's not necessarily particularly a phishing to get like your credentials or anything like that. So it's not, they're not looking at, or the way that the writers are looking at this is, so smishing is phishing via SMS, vishing is phishing via voicemail. But because it was somebody impersonating the head of IT, it makes it impersonation. and not trying to fish for credentials, or calling somebody and telling them they need to buy a bunch of Apple gift cards and then send them over to a particular email. That would be what would be more considered phishing for CompTIA. So yeah, it's one of these questions that's almost unfair at how, because the answers overlap so much, but it's kind of one of those where it makes you dig in a little deeper into the differences between them, and kind of where those lines may be drawn on the exam. But definitely you won't see anything like this on the exam. It'll be a little more obvious, and you'll probably have 2 to choose from, as opposed to possibly 3 within this particular question. So Tom's organization recently learned that a vendor is discontinuing support for their customer relationship management system. What should concern Tom the most from a security perspective? So is it unavailability of future patches, a lack of technical support, theft of customer information, or increased costs? I think I have actually used this question in the past when I was doing 601 back before the new year. This one seems really familiar to me, but I like the question because it's another one of those, what is the best answer here? So if they're discontinuing support for their CRM system, what is really the way that I look at this, what is Tom's biggest concern in this situation? So for me, it's obvious. Let's see what everybody says. Unavailability of future patches. That is the correct answer there. So lack of technical support could definitely be an issue, but definitely not the biggest issue, because as vulnerabilities are exposed, they may not be patchable anymore. You may not be able to fix them. So that would be his primary concern. So you'd be looking at, okay, in this situation, if we're going to continue to use the CRM platform until we find another vendor or anything like that, what do we do? What are our compensating controls that we're going to put in place to reduce that risk for these unpatchable vulnerabilities that may occur between now and the time that we get switched over to a new system? So unavailability of future patches is going to be your biggest one. Lack of technical support. There's probably enough documentation, some of the wikis, and on some other on websites out there for a lot of these products where users are talking about what they're doing. So yeah, Chris, it definitely, so like a concern could be theft of customer information if from the unavailability of future patches. So again, like theft of customer information would be a result of unavailability of future patches. So your primary concern still falls back to future patches. But again, as the explanation is, there's no indication in the question that, discontinuing the product is going to result in the theft of customer information or increased costs. But those could be, increased cost if you lose that customer information and you get fined. Yeah, root cause, that is absolutely it. That is CompTIA to a T, is really the best answer. Or if these all roll up into one, that's probably your correct answer in a lot of cases. Or if you have 2 out of the 3, or you have four answers and 3 of them all kind of overlap, but 2 of those 3 all roll up into one of them, that's your answer. That's probably going to be the best answer, or the best possible solution. Yeah, so you gotta patch it. So Edward Snowden was a government contractor who disclosed sensitive government documents to journalists to uncover what he believed were unethical activities. Which of the following terms best describes Snowden's activities? Choose 2. So he's a government contractor, disclosed sensitive government information, to uncover what he believed were unethical activities. I know this is Jesse's hero, old Eddie Snowden. But where did he fall in these categories? Again, these categories can overlap. So was he an insider, state actor, activist, an advanced persistent threat, or organized crime? So select the two that best fit his description. Dang, I chose this new playlist. I'm really digging the music tonight. Nice chill vibes. While I'm waiting on participant number 4, is anybody going to any conferences this spring? Got anything on the books coming up soon? I've got the Atlanta Cybersecurity Summit on Friday. Really looking forward to it. Last year it was like 1,000 attendees and probably 20 or 30 different companies there, and a lot of really good talks. We had Chad Hunt. He's worked in cybersecurity for the FBI. He's an agent in the cybersecurity division. So it was super cool last year, and they've got some really good talks coming up this year. So looking forward to getting out there. I'm kind of not necessarily my peer group, because a lot of it is like senior. They're more senior, like InfoSec, so a lot of CTOs and a lot of CIOs and stuff like that. But I figured go there and network, and hopefully that'll help me land my next job before my contract's up in June. So I gotta find a place to land before then. So that's my goal. Awesome. Exam Slayer, it's Tony, right? South Florida ISSA. Yeah, ISSA is a fantastic organization. If you're not a member, it is totally cool. A lot of the local ISSA groups, their meetings are free, even for non-members. You just got to sign up, but they give you dinner. Normally have a really good talk. Like the one last Thursday was on SASE, so Secure Access Service Edge, and how that works between your local environment and your cloud environments. So yeah, ISSA is a fantastic way to network and just overall knowledge. They do a lot of webinars as well. I'll pull up the link to where I think it's Handshake, where they do a lot of their webinars, and they're all like Zoom calls. But even like I've attended some of like the Denver ISSA and the Philadelphia ISSA, like these different groups, just because it's something that interested me, and you wind up networking with a lot of these people from outside your normal area, but great people to know. Really builds up your LinkedIn nicely for additional content. So I absolutely recommend getting out to ISSA. Again, it doesn't cost you anything, but if you do decide to sign up, depending on your local group, it could be anywhere from like $75 to $125 for the year. But in my opinion, worth every penny to support them. And I'm working right now with my local ISSA to try to get the internships, apprenticeships, and mentorship program, the IAM program, off the ground here in Atlanta to provide essentially a pathway for career changers and young aspiring cybersecurity professionals, a way to get into the industry and get into some of these bigger companies. Like, I would hope that we could get like Home Depot or Coca-Cola or some of these bigger companies on board and start to drive that internship and apprenticeship and get people in. And then the mentorship part, I mean, I try to do it anyhow, just, being that point of contact and knowledge. So it's a super cool group, and just, I mean, it's all, very much Simply Cyber. It's very much like it's all inclusive. It's very, doesn't matter your experience level. They take anybody, and they are happy to talk to you. And I mean, I've not met anybody that I didn't like at one of these meetings. So absolutely recommend it. So Edward Snowden, yes, we are 100% on this one. Insider and hacktivist. So hacktivist because he believed there were unethical activities that drove him to make his choice to release those sensitive government documents. And then an insider because he was a government contractor. So it was all political motivations to fall under hacktivist. And then because he is a contractor with that inside access, that makes him insider threat. We'll keep rocking and rolling here. Question number 5. What type of assessment is particularly useful for identifying insider threats? Is it behavioral assessments, instinctual assessments, habitual assessments, or IOCs, your indicators of compromise? So we didn't particularly touch on this. I did make a kind of off-the-cuff mention about what you look for in insider threats to identify them. But we kind of drive back into UEBA or EUBA, drive into those analytics and assessments. So all 4 answers here. So end user behavioral analytics. So IOCs could definitely, I mean, if they are driving, if they're using some sort of malware or a keylogger or something like that to export or exfiltrate data, absolutely could be something that shows up on the network. It could also be that, I mean, they're logging in at weird times, but those indicators of compromise are particularly behavioral. Normally you see a change of behavior in that person. They become disgruntled, they become quiet, they're not showing up to work on time, and then weird things start happening from their endpoint. So it ends up being behavioral as the correct answer here. So insider threats are often hard to distinguish from normal behavior. Context of the actions performed, so after hours logins, misuse of credentials, and logins from abnormal locations or abnormal patterns are behavioral indicators. So your end user behavior analytics, so EUBA, you'll see it referred to in a lot of detection tools and stuff like that. Joseph receives an email notifying him that he needs to change his password due to a recent account issue. He notices that the email links him to a website using the domain amaz0n.com. So Amazon, but with a 0 instead of an O. What type of attack should he describe this as? Is it typo squatting, phishing, smishing, or a watering hole attack? Now, before y'all jump on this one, this is a trick question. So it definitely, depending on how he approaches that domain name, changes the answer for this question. Yeah, Tony, I'm in the active defense and cyber deception course today too. I probably got to listen to about 2.5 hours of it total while I was at the vet and just busy doing everything else, and working on my slide deck this morning, and a little bit of everything. It's just, today was a little crazy, and then I added that on top of all of it. But I'm going to go back, once they post the video, I'm going to go back through today's and go back through it. But I really enjoyed what I was hearing. It was super, super interesting, and I can't wait to take some time, maybe even after the stream tonight, and just dig deep into it, and give myself no sleep before work tomorrow. So just try to live and breathe cybersecurity, and maybe even sleep cybersecurity if I fall asleep doing it. So Oh, awesome. Yeah, I was waiting to see when the replay was going up. I was keeping an eye on the Discord. I appreciate you letting me know. So, an email notifying him of this account issue. So the email is linking him to a site that does not, it's Amazon, but it's not quite Amazon. So this is a trick question. It's kind of another one of those best, and we are split down the middle. So those of you that answered phishing absolutely got this correct. So the email is an attempt to get information and is a phishing email. So because he did not enter that URL himself, he didn't mistype that URL. That URL is meant to be deceiving on its own. That is why it is not a typo squatter email, because it would be an email. It's a website that he's clicking on as opposed to actually typing it in. So it makes it not typo squatting if he's not typing it in, is essentially how CompTIA looks at it. So him mistyping it and typing in Amazon.com incorrectly and it goes to the incorrect website is what typo squatters rely on. And yeah, there's technicality here. It's, again, another one of those, like, what is the best answer? So phishing is your best answer here. It's obviously not smishing because it's not SMS, and it's not a watering hole attack because it is not a poisoned website, like an official, normal, like a actual company's website that has malicious stuff buried in the background. So phishing was our answer. Oh look, I got another typo in DNS there. All right, so Nicole accidentally types esmazon.com into her browser and discovers that she is directed to a different site loaded with ads and pop-ups. Which of the following is the most accurate description of the attack she has experienced? So here's the other half of our question here from the previous one. So she accidentally mistypes Amazon.com into smazon.com. Smamazon. Smamazon.com. Is it DNS hijacking, farming, typo squatting, or host file compromise? Got 3 answers in. Rock and roll. Typo squatting it is. Typo squatting uses misspellings and common typos of websites to redirect traffic for profit or malicious reasons. So fortunately, Amazon actually owns esmazon.com. So they actually have, one of the ways that you can prevent typo squatting is by purchasing a lot of these other URLs. I was talking to a friend who works for Chick-fil-A, and they will actually buy up pretty much any variation on Chick-fil-A.com, or I hate Chick-fil-A, or Chick-fil-A is the devil.com. Anything that is like hacktivism related to their brand, they will actually like purchase all those domains. And from what I hear, they own something like 3,000 domains that they pay for on a monthly basis just to keep people from using those particular URLs to protest, because being a Christian company and they've got values that not everybody agrees with. But again, it's back to hacktivism, and typo squatting can be used by hacktivists as well. So all of it, all this stuff ties back together in practice. DNS hijacking and host file modifications both attempt to redirect traffic to actual URLs or host names. So essentially you get into a DNS server, or you get into the system host file, and you redirect Amazon.com to a malicious IP address. So you're poisoning the DNS, or you're poisoning that host file to force that redirection to a different website. And then farming, it does redirect legitimate traffic to fake sites, but that is not the correct answer. So y'all got this correct. It is typo squatting. Question 8. Which of the following motivations is most commonly attributed to hacktivists? Which one of the financial motivation, or which one of the following motivations, not financial motivations, which one of the following motivations is most commonly attributed? Was it war, financial gain, political or philosophical beliefs, or ethical. So again, this is kind of the best answer. And what does CompTIA want you to associate with hacktivism? We got our 3 answers in, and y'all nailed it. Philosophical or political beliefs. So they're defined by their actions, advancing their political or philosophical beliefs, and they engage in cyber attacks that they believe will advance their causes. So sometimes those philosophical beliefs can overlap with ethical, or it could be due to a war, as we see with the war in Ukraine and Israel. Very seldomly will you see financial gain associated with hacktivism. Primarily it is just about making a statement. So Ursula recently discovered that a group of developers are sharing information over a messaging tool provided by a cloud vendor, but not sanctioned by her organization. What term best describes the use of this technology? So are we dealing with shadow IT here? A system integration, vendor management, or data exfiltration? So diving into, you've worked in a large organization, you know sometimes that sourcing and vendor management operate on their own, and sometimes vendor management will go and buy a tool that sourcing doesn't know about. But when we really dig down into this, what are we dealing with? Shadow IT. So again, a best answer here. So could be vendor management purchasing a tool without anybody else knowing, which would make it fall under shadow IT. Data exfiltration could be a product of shadow IT, but the use of this technology is shadow IT. There's not anything to indicate in the question that they're using this to share information externally or anything like that. So it would lead me to not necessarily choose data exfiltration as my number one choice, but shadow IT for sure. There's no indication of that data security being compromised, but so it's the best answer here would be shadow IT. Great job, guys. Question 10. Which of the following attackers is most likely to associated with an APT? So we have nation state actors, activists, unskilled attackers, or insider threats. Which of the following is going to be an advanced persistent threat? And those of y'all that watch the daily cyber threat briefing, this should be an easy one for you. I feel like Jerry goes over this about once a week, at least. And if you're not a watcher of the daily cyber threat briefing, why not? Get in there. But I'm pretty sure out of the, I think 7 of y'all watching it right now, we've got a pretty big overlap with that community. So pretty sure most of y'all are, if not Team Live, you're Team Replay. We are all Team SC. Drop a hashtag Team SC in chat. You are a viewer. Yeah, I try to spread the word when I'm out at, whether it's at a conference or the ISSA meetings or anything like that. Try to share the love, and I try to bring people into Slay Security Plus if that is kind of their focus. And then well, you know what? You need to start watching the daily cyber threat briefing. And if you heard about Black Hills information security, and just start to overwhelm people with knowledge and just kind of lead the horse to water. And here's everything I can give you up front, and tell me what I can help with, and I'm just going to give you all the tools, and it's up to you to use them. So that's how I learned. I talked to people and just kind of found out what they listen to and what they what they absorb and, you know, leverage that to my advantage. So that's how I learn every day is, yeah, drink up, horse. It is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't drown it. But I can absolutely put you right in front of all the tools you need to succeed. We got 4 of 4 in here. Saw 5 in there for a minute. But yeah, nation state actors. Y'all nailed it. So advanced persistent threats are most commonly associated with nation state actors. Though in the new 701 documentation, as you start to dig through that book, I've got the Cybex study guide and the practice test book that I use for both my lessons as well as just keeping my skills sharp. They've started to attribute APTs as well being not just nation states, but also part of the organized crime, because you're starting to see a lot more advanced knowledge and a lot more skill being employed by these by the organized crime. I mean, they operate almost like a Fortune 500 company with the level of development and everything else, and the way that they have a CI/CD, so continuous integration, continuous deployment, or continuous delivery system set up for their software and everything else. They're very, very organized. They even have, to the point of having a marketing team, so to speak, or a customer support team that, you know, when they've locked them down with ransomware, they have, here's John, it's going to help you through how to actually purchase cryptocurrency and pay us to unlock your network. Like, so it's absolutely crazy the level of sophistication that these groups have and the amount of money they generate, and some of the stuff that, I mean, you see, I can't remember what the group was out of, that was Ukrainian and Russian, and then when the war happened, the Ukrainians dumped everything out. I'm sure one of y'all have the name right off the top of your head. But they dropped all the financials and everything, and how their paydays worked and everything else, and like how the organization was set up. Those organized crime groups are no joke. They are definitely advanced persistent threats as well. But for the exam, primarily nation state. If you have to pick between the two, nation state's always going to be your correct answer. So our final question for the evening. Greg believes that an attacker may have installed malicious firmware in a network device before it was provided to his organization by the supplier. What type of threat vector best describes this attack? So there's our favorite word for CompTIA right there, best. So what type of threat vector best describes this attack? So an attacker may have installed malicious firmware on a network device before it was provided to his organization. So kind of have a couple answers here that could absolutely fit. And when we think network device, I think a physical device being supplied. So immediately knocks cloud out of the running for me. But removable media, maybe? I mean, kind of runs like into the attacker may have used removable media to put the firmware on the network device. I mean, it would have required direct access, but when we think about it, I look at key terms in the question here. Supplier, before it was provided to his organization, is a key phrase in there. Like, I start leaning towards option number 4, supply chain. So while these other options, removable media and direct access, could have absolutely been forces that attacker could have used, the best possible answer here is supply chain, because it is an attack on the supply chain. So supplier is what kind of leads me into that, and it was an attack that happened in the production of that device before it made it to your organization. So it would be a supply chain attack here. So yeah, right here, security plus questions often use this type of misdirection. So we are looking at supply chain here. Again, it's this 4-letter word that will absolutely get you on the exam, but it also tells you, okay, I probably have 2 or 3 options here that could absolutely be a correct answer, but which one, when I think about this process, the attacker may have used removable media and direct access within the supply chain to install that malicious firmware. So what is the overarching, what umbrella does everything else fall under? Gives me that best answer. And I gotta say, I am part of hashtag Team Nutrunner, because that was absolutely hysterical a couple weeks ago. And coming out of the automotive industry and dealing with Bosch products and everything else for a number of years, that just, it hit home and just made me giggle. So hashtag Team Nutrunner. So we are all wrapped up here. Y'all are absolutely killing it tonight. I know not everybody answered all of the questions. I know we had some had 3, some had 4, some had 5. So can't really necessarily go by our final scores here, but I mean, if I'm looking at it, y'all are killing it. I mean, we are 2 sections into this, and we got a whole lot more overlap that we're going to run through. So as we get into these later sections, I fully expect that we're going to start seeing these questions. We're going to start seeing all these scores way higher, and everybody competing for that number 1 spot. I fully believe that, I mean, as we continue doing this and we get used to the way these exam questions are asked, and just it's repetition. Repetition is key for this. And it's every single day. We just got to stick with it and rock and roll, and I mean, live and breathe it. My tips are as many sources as you can ingest during the day, just listening to cybersecurity. So whether it's Malicious Life podcast or Darknet Diaries or the Daily Cyber Threat Briefing, or I've got a couple other podcasts that I listen to. And while I'm working, I've got just this background, and like, I mean, I'm working while I'm doing the active defense and cyber deception. I've got that going on in the background, and I'm participating with some of it, and I'm rewatching it later. But that repetition is absolutely key. And whether or not you understand what somebody's talking about, you may not understand it now. And they said it in the active defense and cyber deception. Can't remember his name, from New Zealand. I think he's the nerd herder. But he said it. He goes, you may not understand it right now. Yes, CyberWire. That was the one I was trying to think of. CyberWire is fantastic. But whether or not you understand it right now doesn't matter. But if you just kind of tuck it away and just remember kind of the context of what is being talked about, guarantee you within a week or 2, it's going to come up again, and it's going to come up with more context, or you're going to end up studying it, or we're going to say something in chat and or in the Discord, and it's going to come up, and you're going to reassociate that, and it's going to all start to piece together. That was something that I really love about the Daily Cyber Threat Briefing. Is when I first started listening 10 months ago, sometimes I had no idea what was going on, but then like 2-3 weeks later, I knew exactly what was going on. It was like all of a sudden it started to make sense, and everything started to piece together. So it absolutely is, awesome just to try and get as many of those just resources and just as much information as you can. Just try to be a sponge and absorb as much of it as you can. I didn't realize CyberWire had books, Chris. That's awesome. I will definitely be checking that out. I actually picked up a couple new books that I'm going to be probably snoozing through, but I've got Building Secure and Reliable Systems. These are all Google books. You can actually get them free on from Google if you go onto Google and search Google SRE. but it is the Site Reliability Engineering and the Site Reliability Workbook. So you can get all three of them for free as ebooks, but I am obviously an old person. I really like my physical books. I like to write in them. I like to mark them up and all sorts of stuff. So, but this was recommended to me by a CISO at GE. He said for really understanding the core of cybersecurity and information security, he said these books will just give you a whole different level of understanding into the industry. So I am excited to dig into them and start to learn some more that I can share with the community. So it's the learning never ends. I mean, so between that and then I'm reached down and got my other book, the CISP. So that is going to be end of February. I'll be taking that exam. So I've got a pile of textbooks to dig through and just absorb as much as I can when I can. So, but I really appreciate y'all. I really appreciate the support, and I know this is probably not my finest showing as far as a presentation. I tried to fill in the gaps between the information that I had on the slide and then kind of explaining everything, at least verbally. Wish I had more time to prep my slides, and I'm gonna be working more to prep during the week and not necessarily on Sunday afternoon or Monday when life can get in the way and can make things less predictable. So I really want to get to a point where I can have a couple weeks ahead of time and then continue to refine these slide decks and everything else, and then of course make them available to everybody as I get them kind of packaged up for each section. So I really appreciate the support and everybody coming out, and of course don't hesitate to reach out to me in chat or on LinkedIn. I am happy to answer any questions. If you're struggling with anything, if you're studying something that we're not currently covering, I am happy to set up time with you, 15, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be, to help you kind of get those things to click and kind of make things work. I'm all about just whatever I can do to help, because honestly, you coming to me and asking me for that help is going to change how I'm going to present it to the community. And it helps me grow as much as it helps you grow. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here to support you. And unfortunately, you're here to support me as well in that regard, that I'm going to learn as much from you as you are from me. So I look forward to it next week. Don't forget Thursday night, 7 p.m. with Jesse. And Jesse, feel free to correct me on that, but I believe it is still 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we will catch you on the flip side. Stay secure and make it a great week. Chris, before signing off, I have a novice understanding of the NIST risk management framework, but I'd be happy to chat with you on it and see if there's anything else I can, if there's anything you're stuck on it. I've been through a couple talks on the risk management framework through ISSA. Again, I can't preach enough about those guys at ISSA. Our local Atlanta one is absolutely fantastic. And it tends to be a very decent balance between networking, security guys, and then GRC. So you get a good blend of everything in there. And I'm hoping sometime this year I will get the confidence and come up with something that I can actually present within my local ISSA group. And of course, I will absolutely share that link because we do a webcast for every one of them. So you can actually catch the Greater Atlanta ISSA. You can catch their monthly meetings, which is the last Thursday of every month. Unfortunately at 7 p.m. So same time as Jesse's stream. But you can catch those online as well. And I mean, it's absolutely fantastic and a great source of knowledge. So if you aren't a member, don't worry about it. Get out to your local meeting, find out what they're about, see if they fit. Misty Eyed, absolutely. I will post a link to the ISSA as an organization. And then on their website, you can actually find your local ISSA groups. And like ours is held at a building in Dunwoody. It's just north of Atlanta. And Savient is one of the big sponsors, and they sponsor the space for us to actually hold that every month. So you get a lot of exposure to different companies and different leaders within the cybersecurity industry. And again, oh yeah, my LinkedIn, absolutely. Let me pop that in chat real quick.
Listening to 92 Elm on Upbeat. This is one of hundreds of tracks.
All right, hopefully this actually sends, because sometimes it gets mad when I send links from Restream. Let me know if it's sent. It should be popping up already. But yeah, I definitely every month I share at least our local meeting invite. And even if you're not local to Atlanta, for ISSA, you're more than welcome to sign up, at least for the webcast. And I'm not trying to step on Jesse's toes, but if you wanted to join in at 7 p.m., you're more than welcome to. And then if you do sign up, they normally send a replay as well out, where you can watch the replay of the most recent meeting and the topics that were covered. So it's just good to keep up and kind of learn from the people that are on the forefront of the changes in our industry and what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So again, thank you guys. I really appreciate y'all coming out. I know the stream went very long. We're at 8:30 now. So hope y'all have a great rest of your evening. And don't forget, make it a great week. Don't let the week happen to you. You control your destiny. Make it a great week. All up to you. Thank y'all. Have a good one.